Northern France, July 1944. 3 weeks after D-Day. A German panzer column, 8 Tiger tanks and supporting vehicles rolled through a recently liberated French village, heading toward the Normandy front. The Wehrmacht had recaptured the village just hours earlier, driving out a small American reconnaissance unit. As the lead Tiger approached the village square, the commander noticed something odd: a battered bicycle lying in the middle of the road. Handlebars twisted, front wheel bent, clearly damaged, probably run over during the earlier fighting. Just another piece of war debris littering a battlefield. The tank commander didn't even slow down. Why would he? It was a bicycle, 30 kilograms of scrap metal and rubber. His Tiger tank weighed 57 tons. The treads would crush it like paper. The right tread rolled over the bicycle's frame. The explosion lifted the front of the Tiger 2 meters off the ground. The blast tore through the tank's belly armor, the thinnest, most vulnerable points, and detonated the ammunition storage inside. Secondary explosions ripped the turret clean off. All 5 crew members died instantly. The tank behind it, showered with shrapnel, caught fire. Its crew bailed out, running for cover as flames consumed their vehicle. The remaining 6 tanks stopped dead. Their commanders screamed into radios, demanding to know what had just happened. How does a bicycle destroy a Tiger tank? It made no sense. Mines didn't look like bicycles. Bombs didn't disguise themselves as wreckage. What kind of weapon was this? The answer lay in one of the SOE's most devious creations, the clam mine, a magnetically triggered anti-tank explosive designed to look like anything except the mine. And when disguised as an abandoned bicycle, it became a psychological weapon that turned every piece of roadside debris into a potential tank killer. This is the story of the bicycle that became a bomb, and how British engineers weaponized the most innocent object imaginable to terrorize German armor crews across occupied Europe. Let's rewind to 1943. The Allies were planning the eventual invasion of Western Europe, and military planners faced a critical problem: German panzer divisions. These armored units represented the Wehrmacht's mobile reserve, the forces that would rush to any Allied landing site and attempt to throw the invasion back into the sea. Conventional anti-tank weapons required trained soldiers with heavy equipment: anti-tank guns, artillery, bazookas. But what if you could slow German armor using weapons that didn't require soldiers at all? What if resistance fighters, civilians with minimal training, could deploy anti-tank weapons that looked like harmless debris? Developed by MD1, the Ministry of Defense department responsible for sabotage devices, the clam was revolutionary. Unlike traditional buried anti-tank mines, the clam attached magnetically to metal surfaces and detonated when a vehicle's magnetic field passed nearby. But the real genius wasn't the mine itself, it was how it could be disguised. The clam's flat, circular design, about 10 centimeters in diameter and 6 centimeters thick, could be hidden inside or attached to virtually any metallic object: tin cans, metal buckets, toolboxes, fuel containers, and yes, bicycles. The bicycle disguise proved particularly effective for a simple psychological reason. Bicycles were everywhere in occupied Europe. Millions of civilians used them for transportation in a world where fuel was rationed and private cars were rare. Damaged or abandoned bicycles littered roadsides, victims of vehicle collisions, broken down and discarded, or simply left behind during evacuations. A bicycle lying in the road wasn't suspicious. It was ordinary, expected, invisible in its mundanity. German tank crews saw dozens every day and drove over them without a second thought. Until those bicycles started exploding. The SOE and OSS quickly realized they'd stumbled onto psychological gold. If you could make German tank commanders afraid of bicycles, afraid of debris, afraid of wreckage, afraid of the harmless clutter of occupied villages, you could slow their advance without firing a shot. But first, they had to perfect the weapon. The clam mine represented a significant departure from conventional anti-tank mine design. Traditional mines were buried in roads, detonated by pressure when vehicles drove over them. This required extensive digging, made them vulnerable to mine detectors, and meant they could be avoided simply by driving off-road. The clam was different. It worked above ground, attached to surfaces magnetically, and triggered via magnetic influence rather than pressure. 5 kilograms of high explosive, typically composition B or Torpex. This was enough to penetrate the belly armor of most German tanks and disable or destroy the vehicle. The magnetic attachment system consisted of powerful horseshoe magnets embedded in the mine's base. These magnets, 4 in the standard configuration, could hold the device firmly to any ferrous metal surface. Place a clam on the underside of a tank, a bridge support, a railway tank car, or inside a steel bucket, and it would stay there until deliberately removed or detonated. The firing mechanism was the revolutionary part. Instead of pressure plates or tripwires, the clam used a magnetic influence fuse. This ingenious device contained a small magnetic needle, essentially a compass needle, suspended in a charged state. When a large metal object, like a tank, passed within a few meters, its magnetic field disturbed the needle. This disturbance triggered an electrical circuit, firing the detonator. The beauty of this system, the mine didn't need to be directly under the tank. It could be beside the road, hidden in debris 5 meters away, and would still detonate. The magnetic signature of a 30-ton tank was strong enough to trigger the fuse at considerable distance. The safety system required 2 separate actions to arm the mine. First, a physical safety pin had to be removed, similar to a grenade pin. Second, a chemical delay activated the magnetic fuse after a preset time, typically 30 minutes to several hours. This gave the person planting the mine ample time to clear the area before the weapon became live. But the clam's true versatility came from its disguisability. That flat, compact design fit inside countless everyday objects. And, of all possible disguises, the bicycle proved most effective. Converting a bicycle into an anti-tank weapon required minimal modification and could be done in the field with simple tools. The standard procedure went like this. Step 1. Select an appropriate bicycle. Ideally, one that already looked damaged or abandoned. A pristine bicycle lying in the road would be suspicious. But a bent, rusted, partially broken bicycle? That fit the environment perfectly. Step 2. Conceal the clam mine. The mine could be hidden in several locations. Inside the bicycle's frame tube, the main horizontal bar connecting seat to handlebars. The tube was hollow on most bicycles, and the clam fit inside if you removed one end cap. From the outside, it looked like a normal bicycle frame. Attached to the underside of the bicycle seat or mudguard assembly, disguised with dirt and rust to blend with the bicycle's weathered appearance. Hidden inside a saddlebag or basket attached to the bicycle, covered with rags or other debris. Step 3. Position realistically. The bicycle couldn't just be placed neatly on the roadside. That would look staged. It needed to appear accidentally abandoned or damaged. Saboteurs would lay it across the road as if struck by a vehicle, or lean it against a wall as if the owner had left it temporarily, or partially submerge it in a roadside ditch. Step 4. Arm the mine. Pull the safety pin, activating the chemical delay. From this point, the resistance fighter had 30 minutes to several hours, depending on delay setting, to leave the area before the magnetic fuse became active. Step 5. Withdraw and wait. The bicycle would sit there looking entirely innocent until a tank or armored vehicle passed within triggering range. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. German tank crews began seeing every roadside bicycle as a potential threat. Orders went out: avoid running over debris, detour around abandoned bicycles, send infantry ahead to clear suspicious objects. But this created impossible situations. French and Belgian roadsides in 1944 were littered with abandoned bicycles, hundreds, thousands of them. Clearing every bicycle before a tank column could pass would take hours and require massive infantry support. Most commanders ignored the warnings and ordered their tanks to proceed normally. And, sometimes, those bicycles exploded. Clam mine production ramped up in 1943-44 as D-Day approached. 5 million clam mines were manufactured during the war, making it one of the most produced British sabotage devices. The mines were shipped to SOE networks and resistance groups throughout occupied Europe via multiple routes. Parachute drops. Containers of clam mines, along with bicycles and disguise materials, were dropped to resistance cells in France, Belgium, Holland, and Norway. The bicycles themselves were often British or captured German military bicycles, the sturdy, heavy-frame type that could withstand rough handling and support the mine's weight. Submarine delivery. In coastal regions, submarines would surface at night to deliver supplies, including clam mines and instructions for their use. Overland smuggling. In some cases, resistance networks smuggled mines across borders or through enemy lines, hidden in legitimate cargo shipments. Training for resistance fighters was minimal by necessity. SOE instructors created simple, illustrated guides. No text, just pictures showing how to conceal the mine, arm it, and position the bicycle. This allowed illiterate or non-English-speaking resistance members to use the weapon effectively. The bicycle disguise became so popular that SOE quartermasters struggled to supply enough damaged bicycles. Some resistance groups began requisitioning bicycles from civilian populations, a controversial practice that strained relationships between resistance networks and the communities they operated within. Deployment intensified in the months before and after D-Day. Resistance fighters placed bicycle-disguised clam mines along known panzer routes, near bridges and crossroads, in recently contested villages where abandoned bicycles would seem natural. And then they waited for the explosions. Documenting successful clam mine attacks is challenging. Many explosions were attributed to conventional mines, and German after-action reports didn't always distinguish between mine types. But several confirmed cases demonstrate the weapon's effectiveness. Case 1. The Normandy Column, July 1944. The incident described in our opening. A French resistance cell planted 3 bicycle mines along a road leading to Caen. The first destroyed a Tiger tank, the second damaged a Panther, and the third failed to detonate. The attack delayed the German column for 4 hours while engineers cleared the route and investigated the destroyed vehicles. Case 2. Belgium, September 1944. As German forces retreated through Belgium, a resistance group placed bicycle mines in a village the Wehrmacht was expected to pass through. A German supply column, including several fuel trucks, triggered one of the mines. The fuel trucks exploded in a massive fireball that destroyed 11 vehicles and closed the road for 2 days. Case 3. Holland, March 1945. A Dutch resistance fighter, working alone, placed a single bicycle mine on a canal bridge. A German self-propelled gun triggered it. The explosion didn't destroy the vehicle, but damaged the bridge enough that the German unit had to detour, adding 8 hours to their journey. But the confirmed kills don't tell the full story. The real impact was operational disruption and psychological warfare. German tank columns began slowing to a crawl when passing through villages or built-up areas, scanning for suspicious debris. Bicycle-shaped debris received particular attention. Engineers were called forward to examine and clear objects that posed no threat. Just damaged bicycles, nothing more. One German tank commander's diary, recovered after the war, describes the paranoia. "We see bicycles everywhere. Most are harmless, but which ones contain British bombs? We cannot check them all. We cannot avoid them all. So we drive carefully, slowly, and pray. The British have made us afraid of children's toys and farmers' tools." The psychological victory was complete. German armor, the most feared component of the Wehrmacht, had been made afraid of bicycles. While the bicycle disguise became iconic, the clam mine's versatility meant it appeared in countless other forms across the European theater. Tin cans and buckets. Resistance fighters would place clam mines inside ordinary metal buckets or large tin cans, then leave them by roadsides or in recently evacuated villages. German troops, seeing potential loot or useful containers, would kick them aside or pick them up, and the movement would sometimes trigger detonation if the magnetic fuse was particularly sensitive. Broken tools. Farm equipment, shovels, metal toolboxes, any steel object large enough to conceal a clam mine became a potential weapon. These disguises worked particularly well in agricultural areas where such items naturally littered fields and roadsides. Vehicle wreckage. Clam mines were hidden inside destroyed vehicles, burnt-out cars, damaged motorcycles that littered battlefields. When German recovery teams arrived to salvage metal or clear roads, moving the wreckage would trigger the mines. Railway applications. Resistance fighters attached clam mines to railway tank cars carrying fuel or chemicals. The magnetic attachment meant they didn't need to access the interior. Just slap the mine onto the outside of a stationary tank car, set the delay, and walk away. Hours later, when the train was miles away, the mine would detonate, rupturing the tank car and causing massive fires. Bridge supports. The magnetic attachment allowed resistance fighters to place clam mines on the underside of metal bridges without extensive climbing or rigging. The mines would detonate when tanks or heavy vehicles crossed, potentially collapsing the span. Sabotage of parked vehicles. The most daring use involved sneaking into German motor pools at night and attaching clam mines to the underside of parked tanks or trucks. The magnetic hold was strong enough that the mine would stay attached even as the vehicle drove away. When the vehicle later parked near other equipment or in a sensitive area, it would detonate with devastating results. But every disguise faced the same challenge: plausibility. The disguise had to fit the environment perfectly, or German soldiers would become suspicious. A bicycle in a village square? Normal. A bicycle in the middle of an open field? Suspicious. Resistance fighters had to think like filmmakers, staging scenes that looked naturally occurring rather than deliberately planted. The Germans recognized the clam mine threat and developed countermeasures, but the weapon's versatility made comprehensive defense nearly impossible. Mine detectors. Standard metal detectors were useless. They detect every piece of metal debris, creating so many false positives that searches became impractical. Specialized detectors designed to find magnetic anomalies were developed but remained rare and unreliable. Degaussing. Some German units experimented with degaussing equipment, electromagnetic systems designed to neutralize magnetic mines by scrambling the magnetic fuse. This worked occasionally, but required specialized equipment that most frontline units lacked. Additionally, degaussing was time-consuming and couldn't be done while vehicles were moving. Remote clearance. German engineers developed procedures for clearing suspicious objects from a distance, using ropes, hooks, and long poles to move debris without approaching it. But this was slow, required specialized training, and didn't work for all scenarios. You can't hook a bicycle embedded in a ditch or attached to a bridge support. Infantry screening. Some tank commanders employed infantry to walk ahead of armor columns, examining suspicious objects before tanks approached. This provided some protection, but slowed advance speeds to a crawl and exposed infantry to other dangers: ambushes, conventional mines, sniper fire. Shoot first policy. Some German units adopted a policy of destroying suspicious objects with machine gun or cannon fire from a distance before approaching. This sometimes detonated clam mines safely, but also destroyed legitimate civilian property, further alienating occupied populations and driving more people into resistance networks. Avoidance. The most common response was simply avoiding obvious dangers, driving around abandoned bicycles, detouring away from debris-littered areas, choosing alternate routes that might be longer but seemed safer. This achieved exactly what the SOE wanted: German forces slowing down, taking longer routes, consuming more fuel, and arriving at destinations exhausted and delayed. The fundamental problem was that the Germans couldn't distinguish between genuine debris and weaponized debris without close examination, and close examination was dangerous. Every abandoned bicycle might be a bomb. Every metal bucket might explode. Every piece of wreckage might kill you. Though German forces lived with constant low-level fear, and constant low-level fear degrades combat effectiveness dramatically. The bicycle mine, like many SOE weapons, existed in morally ambiguous territory. Unlike conventional military weapons that clearly distinguished between combatants and civilians, the clam mine disguised as civilian objects blurred those lines. German propaganda seized on this, portraying the Allies as terror bombers who weaponized innocent objects and endangered civilians. This wasn't entirely wrong. Clam mines disguised as bicycles or household objects could theoretically be triggered by civilians rather than military targets. In practice, this rarely happened. The magnetic fuse required the mass of a large vehicle to trigger. A person walking past wouldn't generate sufficient magnetic disturbance. And the mines were typically placed on routes known to be used by German military traffic, not in areas where civilians congregated. But the risk existed, and SOE planners acknowledged it. Training materials emphasized placing mines in locations where only military vehicles would pass. Resistance fighters were instructed never to place bicycle mines in town centers, near schools, or along routes used primarily by civilian traffic. Despite these precautions, accidents occurred. At least 3 documented cases exist of civilians triggering clam mines, though details remain sparse and it's unclear whether these were bicycle mines or other clam disguises. The SOE classified these incidents and suppressed information about them, fearing public backlash. The ethical question remains: was it acceptable to weaponize everyday objects knowing there was some risk to non-combatants? SOE leadership argued yes, the risk was minimal, the military value significant, and the alternative, allowing German armor to move freely, would cost far more lives. Resistance fighters who actually planted the devices had more complicated feelings. Some viewed it as necessary warfare against an occupying force that had abandoned any moral high ground. Others struggled with the deception inherent in weaponizing innocent objects. One Belgian resistance fighter, interviewed decades after the war, reflected, "We turned bicycles into bombs. The Germans turned our country into a prison." After the war ended, the clam mine created a massive disposal problem. Thousands had been deployed but never detonated, either because they malfunctioned, because German forces avoided them, or because the war ended before they could be triggered. These unexploded mines remained deadly. The magnetic fuse stayed active indefinitely once armed. Moving them was dangerous. Disarming them required specialized training. And many were hidden so well that even the resistance fighters who'd planted them couldn't remember exact locations. Allied bomb disposal units spent months clearing occupied territories of unexploded clam mines. The job was made harder by the weapons' disguises. They had to examine every abandoned bicycle, every metal bucket, every piece of suspicious debris. Several disposal personnel died during this work. One British engineer was killed in Holland in October 1945 when a bicycle he was examining for hidden explosives detonated. The bicycle had been sitting by a roadside for over a year, armed and waiting for a target that never came. Disposal operations continued sporadically into the 1950s. Farmers plowing fields occasionally unearthed clam mines hidden in agricultural equipment. Construction workers found them in demolished buildings. As late as 1982, a clam mine was discovered in a Belgian canal during dredging operations, still functional after nearly 40 years. The design influenced Cold War-era mine development. Both NATO and Warsaw Pact forces developed magnetic influence mines for anti-tank and anti-ship applications. Modern naval mines use similar principles, magnetic sensors detecting ships' steel hulls and triggering detonation. The bicycle mine specifically entered military folklore. It appears in veteran memoirs, resistance histories, and intelligence training materials as an example of creative weaponization. The Imperial War Museum's display includes a bicycle with a cutaway showing a clam mine hidden in the frame, one of the most photographed exhibits in their World War II collection. Behind the technical details were human beings, the resistance fighters who risked their lives planting these weapons, often with minimal training and maximum danger. Marie Laurent, a French resistance member, planted her first bicycle mine at age 17. She later described the experience. "I was so frightened I could barely hold the bicycle steady while attaching the mine. My hands shook so badly I thought I might drop it, but I remembered my brother, killed by Germans at a checkpoint for no reason." She planted 11 more bicycle mines over the following year. 3 detonated successfully. The others were either discovered and disposed of by German engineers or remained unfound until Allied bomb disposal teams cleared them after liberation. Peter van Dam, a Belgian railway worker, used his position to place clam mines disguised as toolboxes in German railway yards. He estimated he planted 27 mines over 18 months. Some exploded when mechanics picked them up to examine the tools inside. Others detonated when rail cars were shunted nearby. I never knew for certain how many succeeded, but I saw German security increase, saw them waste hours searching for more bombs. Hauptmann Friedrich Weber, a German Panther tank commander, survived 3 encounters with clam mines, none using bicycle disguises. His tank drove over a mine disguised as a fuel can, which destroyed the vehicle's tracks but left the crew unharmed. Later, his tank was damaged by a mine attached to a bridge support. The third encounter, just weeks before Germany's surrender, involved a mine hidden in a demolished building. Weber wrote in his memoirs, "I began to believe every object was a bomb. Every piece of debris, every abandoned item, every civilian object became suspect." The bicycle mine wasn't the war's most lethal weapon. It didn't destroy hundreds of tanks or change major battles' outcomes. In raw numbers, conventional anti-tank mines and artillery killed far more German armor. But the bicycle mine and the clam mine system it represented achieved something arguably more valuable. It weaponized the ordinary. It turned the mundane landscape of occupied Europe into a potential threat. It made German tank commanders fear debris, hesitate before crossing bridges, slow down when passing through villages. It proved that you didn't need sophisticated technology or massive resources to fight back against an occupying army. Sometimes, all you needed was a magnetic mine, a damaged bicycle, and the courage to plant it where the enemy would find it. The bicycle mine was psychological warfare disguised as conventional sabotage. Weber was experiencing the weapon's true purpose, not to kill, though it could do that, but to create doubt, hesitation, and fear. And in war, those intangibles matter as much as bullets and shells. A tank column that moves cautiously arrives late. A commander who hesitates makes mistakes. An army that fears the debris littering its path has already lost something intangible but crucial: the assumption that the environment itself is neutral. The SOE's bicycle mine took that assumption away. It cursed the bicycle, that most innocent, universal symbol of civilian life, and transformed it into a symbol of resistance, sabotage, and sudden death. So why was this bicycle cursed? Because British engineers cursed it deliberately, intentionally, strategically. They took something harmless and made it deadly. They took something ordinary and made it terrifying. And in doing so, they reminded the Wehrmacht that in occupied Europe, nothing was safe, nothing was certain, and even a child's bicycle could kill a 60-ton tank. That wasn't a curse. That was victory. From cursed bicycles to exploding rats to silent rifles, WW2 Weapons uncovers the most ingenious, deadly, and downright bizarre weapons ever created. Don't miss what's next. Subscribe now and discover the secret arsenal that changed history, one impossible weapon at a time.